Anyway, let's see why he hates polyamorous people.
About 5 years ago, a British TV show called Love Don't Judge featured a glowing profile of 5 people, 1 woman and 4 men.
I think it's very funny how he is acting like he had any familiarity about this aside from covering it to be derisive.
We're in a polyamorous relationship with each other, and clips from the episode went viral, and the 5 lovebirds quickly became the faces of polyamory, and they are interesting faces indeed. Watch.
This is Tori. She fell in love with Travis and Ethan and Mark and Chris. Their 4-way relationship is working wonders for them.
The relationship could best be described by having Tori as the hub and all of us are spokes on a giant wheel.
Who cares? Like here's my big thing, Matt. Good for them. If everybody is happy and everybody feels cared for and everybody in a relationship has their emotional and physical needs met, if nobody is being hurt by it, who cares? And I love how he insinuates, he has this snide little remark like, they became the faces of the movement, and they certainly are interesting faces. It's like, who the fuck are you talking about, buddy?
Yes, how will they all cope with the new addition to the family? Well, unfortunately, we got an answer to that question rather quickly, and the answer is horrific. Only 5 weeks after the baby was born, the baby you just heard about there, Ethan Balcom, one of the 5 musketeers, was arrested for abusing the infant so viciously that she had severe injuries.
There's a reason at the beginning I said, if nobody's getting hurt, why do you care? The thing is that Matt, like we were talking about before, is going to use this extenuating circumstance as an example of why polyamory is bad. And like, obviously, any person who does that should be under the jail. Like, there's no, you'll find no argument for me. But that has nothing to do with being polyamorous at all. Yeah, there are gross, rotten people in every group.
Organs and had several brain bleeds.
Jesus fucking.
Balcom reportedly told police that he injured the baby because he was frustrated that she was preventing him from sleeping.
That's the kind of shit that happens all the time, regardless of polyamory. That happens all the time in cis straight relationships. It's a problem with parents and people who are not ready to parent. Has nothing to do with polyamory. Yeah, no, Mr. Yago, we cry for the kid, Matt giggles for the chance to mock. Yeah, this is another case where Matt is taking any opportunity he can to bend a very real and vicious and unfortunate tragedy to his end. By pretending, by putting on a facade that he actually gives a fuck about this kid, it allows him to launch into, because like this is the point he's launching off of to talk about polyamory as a whole. Like this is how he wants to preface his conversation. This is the tone he's setting. He doesn't actually care about the kid. The rest of this video isn't going to be about that kid or that person. I can almost guarantee it.
If you listen to the media, which has been in the midst of a full court press over the past few days.
There we go. There we are, Matt. Switching gears from a story from 5 years ago to 3 articles that happen to be published concurrently. Great job.
To promote this kind of dysfunction to the masses.
And by the way, the articles aren't promoting, they are exploring ideas about polyamory. For those who don't know, polyamory, as there's been a growing recognition of queer people, polyamory comes very natural to queer communities. And also, I feel one thing that's underserved in discussions about polyamory is examining how the housing market and sustainable work-life balance plays into it. Because it's a lot easier to room with a bunch of people, especially if you're young and just starting out in the workforce, than it is to go and pay for a house yourself. And hey, sometimes young people like to be in relationships with other people. Like, sometimes that just happens. especially as, like I was saying, more and more people are more open-minded to different kinds of relationships and attractions to others without fear of social stigma. Like, I had a friend who was living with me, they moved out, and they had one of their first lesbian relationships with their roommate that they were living with at the time. Like, it just happens. And people are less afraid of it now. So we're going to see polyamory become more of a thing. Now, here's the thing. Is there's a lot of, you see it on dating apps a lot of the time. You get on, like on dating profiles and dating apps and stuff, you get a lot of people who say ENM, or ethically non-monogamous. And that is a kind of polyamory. It's not quite the same as what I'm willing to bet these articles are talking about, where that is more like what I have with my partners. Like, I have two partners, and they don't engage with each other very often unless they both, you know, come to a comedy show of mine or something. But like, we occasionally will go out together, but mostly I date one and I date the other, and I have different relationships with each of them, and they both occupy a wonderful, loving, and supportive place in my life. And that's fine. That's all well and good. And we are ethically non-monogamous on top of that for all three of us, because we trust each other and keep each other aware of like what we're doing and how safe we're being and all that stuff. So there's a lot of trust, and there's a lot of relationship buildup required to get to that point. A lot of people, especially you get a lot of ENM or poly people who are like trying it out or don't really have a lot of experience with it, that come in the form of straight couples who are either learning that they might not be all the way straight. They've been married for a couple years, they want to spice up the relationship, or they're looking for a third or something like that. And that can be a doorway to a lot of people discovering, you know, more about themselves and their sexuality, which, you know, self-discovery is never really a bad thing. But there are these common misconceptions because of people like that who are just looking for thirds, who are looking for unicorns online, or are looking for, you know, either to try and experiment with a girl or experiment with a guy or a trans person or whatever. It gives polyamory as a whole this like slightly undeserved reputation as something that is only sexual, when really that's not it. Like it becomes this conversation. Like there was somebody I dunked on, I retweeted on Twitter earlier, or I quote tweeted earlier, because it was going on about how polyamory is like the apex of being like something about the capitalist system and being selfish and self-serving and only thinking of yourself. And it's like, that's not at all. Like if your experience with polyamory, which it sounds like that guy on Twitter's experience was literally just like somebody else being, hey, why don't we open up our relationship? And then they get all the sex. And then he's like, that's not really polyamory. You know, that's non-monogamy, but it's not really polyamory in the way a lot of people think about it. I think a lot of people see polyamory as a, like, this no holds barred, like just open free for all. You aren't tied down by any attachments or relationships, and you don't have to do anything. You can just sleep with whoever you want. And that's not the case at all. Like, I feel a lot of responsibility to talk to my partners all the time and make sure they're doing okay, and provide for them when I can, and, you know, make sure I make time in my schedule to see them, and I feel that, and they do a wonderful job of doing the same. Like, we have a relationship. And it's not just sexual at all. So it's just like ridiculous how polyamory kind of gets cast as this like selfish sexual thing of just like, oh, people, you just can't accept limits, and you just want everything, and you don't care about what happens to other people. It's like, not that at all. Like, what are you doing? Stop it.
Stop it. Get some help.
So first up, and this again is all in the past week as we start off 2024. First up to the plate was the New York Times with an article about, according to the headline, a polyamorous mom who had a big sexual adventure and found herself. Now, this polyamorous mom has apparently just published a memoir
How much? $5. How much do we want to bet Matt Walsh just like ends up outright insulting her for being like a degenerate or selfish? I bet he calls her selfish. Selfish is one I bet he's gonna say.
Titled More, a memoir of...
Yeah, exactly, Crovey. That's a really good way to put it. It's not greed. It's just a lot of love to share. Like that's exactly it. Like I am not a greedy partner at all. I am not stingy. I am not like miserly with either giving or paying for stuff, or like especially hearing about other partners and stuff. Like you just have to be open with others and open with yourself and honest. And I feel like it's really hard for people like Matt to certainly be honest with themselves. Ife Watson, it's always weird to me how sexual non-poly people think polyamory is. I'm a sex repulsed or ace person in polyamorous queer platonic relationship with two partners. There's nothing sexual about it for me. No, it's like it's a relationship. It's like, that's the thing. It can be just a relationship. Like you can have a non-sexual, still romantic relationship. Like I don't understand. Yeah, and I think this is why polyamory draws such a wide queer experience to it, is because you get people who understand that a little bit better, who are okay with that. You know, you get people, if you're trans, you probably know more people who are asexual or who are on some kind of other divergence of like gender identity or expression. Excuse me. So if you were to get a partner who's like, yeah, I'm ace. Sorry, I don't want to have sex. I don't want to do this thing. You are probably way more likely to be okay with that as a trans person and understanding those variances of sexual experience and romance and interaction than you were if you were a, you know, cis straight white dude who has no experience with those things. And like Matt has been conditioned to believe that sex is part of the relationship experience. Even if Matt probably would say that, you know, like, oh, sex should be reserved for marriage and stuff. Like he would probably admit that most straight men believe sex is a part of the relationship experience. Whereas a lot of queer people know that doesn't have to be true. And even when it is true, it can be true to varying degrees.
Open marriage. Because, needless to say, what the world needs most right now is yet another memoir written by a middle-aged woman about how she embarked on a quest of self-discovery, and the quest involved nothing but, you know, having sex with a bunch of random dudes. That's exactly what we need right now.
Did she only fuck dudes though, Matt? Oh, it's gonna make him so mad when the lesbians come out. Oh boy.
You know, there's a memoir like this published every 45 minutes or so, and they're all the same. You know, all of these women are interchangeable.
Matt, you're a fan of middle-aged white women writing essays and documents and books on self-discovery? Oh yeah? Name 5. That's what I thought.
Experiences are as uninteresting as they are unoriginal, and their insights, what little insights they have, are equal parts cliched and bogus. Now, next there was a big piece in USA Today declaring in its opening paragraph,
oh, that was it. He's not going to go into it anymore. Okay, cool. Awesome. Just spent like literally, what, 60 seconds on just that? Rad. Awesome.
Relationships are having a moment. Polyamory, ethical non-monogamy, and similar terms are becoming a bigger part of our cultural lexicon. But perhaps the most known type of open relationship is swinging, and swingers are having a moment too. Just ask Kylie George, a swinger who chronicles her journey on Swing Talk, a hashtag with more than 2.6 billion views on TikTok. The community also connects via symbols. An upside-down pineapple is the most viral and well-known. George recently married her partner, and the pair were able to celebrate with all of their Swing Talk creator friends and communicate within a Discord group of more than 30,000 members. They plan events, educate, provide resources, and enjoy a safe communal space.
Yeah, that sounds like pretty much any kink community I know. Like swinging is again, like some of these terms get murky because there's a lot of overlap in them. Like most people who are engaged in a kink community, it sounds like a lot like the swinger community. It is all about providing resources, providing education and understanding, and just like creating a good feeling space for people to express themselves in. And it's the same thing. There's a great sex shop around here called Brazen that I'm actually looking at a sticker I put on a piece of my furniture from them. And they do like shibari workshops and stuff for very similar reasons. And it's like a fun, like, bring your friends type thing to do. Like, it's not everybody has a stick shoved all the way up there, Matt. I want to see him go actually into these things, but I don't think he will. I think this opening, like, 4-minute volley is, like, the best we're going to get. I really do.
Polyamory for, quote, the curious couple. Now, before we read any of the article in this issue of the magazine, we should note the cover of the magazine, which you can see right here. And you can see the words polyamory in big, bold block letters, along with a picture of 4 cats embracing. And it kind of makes you think, why did they choose cats for the cover photo? I mean, there must have been some thought put into this.
Is it because subconsciously, Matt, you also hate cats? Because, like everything else you hate, they're independent creatures who don't desperately need your approval, and you can't readily control them? That's what I'm gonna say. I'm locking that answer in.
Must have.
Yeah, my Levy. Also, it's because the cats are in love. Dog.
Route, and for one thing, polyamory represents mating habits more often found in animals than in humans. By pushing this on us, they are pushing us to behave like beasts. But I think more likely.
Oh, I love evolutionary logic pushed by a dude who doesn't think evolution is real.
We saw what happened the last time they gave us
so good
of polyamory, and they don't want to make that mistake again. So they'd rather not show you the kinds of.
Again, he's referencing something that happened 5 years ago. That was why the media, which is these 3 completely distinct and different and divergent stories. One of them was a book. 2 of them are articles. One of them's a cover story. And the reason that these 3 different things got together and said, oh no, we don't want to put polyamorous people on the cover of this because we got some cute cat pictures. The reason they're actually doing it secretly is because the last time they did it, somebody got hurt. You crack the code. Dude thinks he's like solving the Da Vinci Code here. It's so
of people who are actually doing this, so they show you cats instead. Anyway, once we move past the cats, we're told the story of a married couple named Nick and Sarah, who have chosen the polygamous lifestyle.
Polygamy is a different thing, dipshit.
Quote, non-monogamy is really
just
designing the bounds of what we want in our relationship and what we're comfortable with, Nick says. For Nick and Sarah, the relationship...
Oh, here's this derisive tone where he purposefully doesn't understand anything different.
Relationships while married to Nick. Currently, Nick has a girlfriend, Anna, who has a husband, Alex, and Alex has other people with whom he explores his desires. The easiest way to explain all this might be in the love language of most ethically non-monogamous people. Google Calendar. Sarah and Nick share a calendar. Nick and Anna share a calendar. Alex and Anna share a calendar. Sarah and Anna do not share a calendar, but are...
I did for a brief time when I was in a relationship. It was a complicated web. Don't want to go too far into it. But I did share a Google Calendar briefly. But here's the thing, getting kicked out of a Google Calendar, oh, that hurts. That shit, when you get used to doing that and calendar sharing with other people, and especially as somebody like me who does not go and do calendar shit, like I keep it all up here to my own detriment. But when you get used to it and it becomes part of your routine, and then that breaks down and ends, and then you don't use Google Calendar, that hurts. Woof.
They are Sarah and Nick and Anna and Alex, a modern polycule, living, laughing, loving, and doing a lot of therapy. Oh, I bet. Yes, what a joy this must be. If you...
God, he's so mad. Like you hear about a bunch of people in a happy, open, committed relationship, understanding each other, and trying to also explore their own boundaries. Oh, how happy they must be. And here's really the thing that a lot of straight people, and especially straight men, and especially when they talk about, like, because every relationship with a straight dude who wants to bring up Like, hey, let's open our relationship up a little bit. The first thing he's thinking is threesome with 2 chicks, or I'm gonna get a side piece. But the way that men are socialized is to be territorial and to be intimidated by other men and to see your partners as like your sexual property. And so it gets real intense for a lot of men when that part is threatened. And you see that, you can still see that here. Like the idea Matt has of like, oh, how dare anybody else have access to a wife. That's like, they're just more mature about it, buddy. They're just not as big mad as you are.
The author and the people she's interviewing are under the impression that their story is an epic, fascinating adventure. In reality, it is, again, the same story all of these people, all these other polyamorous groupings are telling. It's the exact same thing.
I love how, again, he hasn't even gone into that story. He showed one clip from the beginning that ended in tragedy 5 years ago. He showed, like, just basically some synopses of other sources. And then he gave a brief overview of this article. And that's his evidence. That's the deep dive he's doing. He's not actually listening to anything. Because, and I realize while he would turn a blind eye to all of this, I think he knows that if he read more of these things and read more of how mature and intellectual these people are and how much they're learning about themselves and how to better love each other and express that affection and boundaries, if his audience heard more about it, honestly, they would probably be like, I don't get it. Why is this bad? Why do I hate this? Like, Matt, I know you're telling me I'm supposed to hate this, but why? This seems like totally fine.
Story. Sarah, the wife, says stuff like, I was on a journey to reconnect with my body and learn about myself as a sexual being. As we've seen, women like this, you know, they love to talk about their sexual dalliances as journeys, right? As if she's Frodo.
See, because Matt, unlike you, most people understand that sex as an experience can get better. You're not just like stuck in one rut. I feel bad for your wife, by the way. This tells me a lot, and this shouldn't be surprising as an associate of Ben Drywife Shapiro. This tells me a lot about how he regards like sex in general. Not as something that could be enriched or improved or should be fun or experimented with, but just something for like pleasure. And that's it. It's just like, damn, that is so... I hope his wife has a vibrator. Like, I really do.
Trekking across Middle Earth, you know, to destroy the ring in Mordor. And not just a middle-aged woman having sex with different dudes. And then we're told that Nick, the husband at first, struggled with the whole his wife has sex with other guys thing. If you can imagine, you know, it was a little bit hard at first. But Sarah helped him very generously to work through these feelings. And at one point, we're told when Nick was feeling especially jealous, Sarah asked him, how do you need to feel loved by me?
He is so... Tea with Goblins, thank you for the 100 biddies. Matt is so solipsistic and bigoted that he assumes not only that his perspective is objective and infallible, but also that every other normal person shares his beliefs. What an angry, lonely life he must lead. Thank you very much for that, Tea with Goblins. I agree. Z Castle has followed. Yeah, it's this... Again, it's... And he really has like this... almost incelic rage right now where he's really painting all the women as villains and like trying to angle like everything he's talked about has really angled polyamory as being in women's favor so they can have all their dalliances, as he says, and the men are left to suffer. Even though he's not explicitly saying that yet, I feel like that's really an angle he's getting to. Like he has a real, there's an incel bite here.
Pretty good question for a wife to ask her husband or vice versa. The problem is that apparently stop having sex with other guys was not an acceptable answer to that question.
Again, we see him
because
literally
possible,
only seeing polyamory as sexual. Like he cannot fathom having an emotional connection with more than one person. Kind of sad, bro.
it's important that
Squid
the
Pope
couples
91,
involved in
thank you for
marriage or
following.
relationships support each other. And supporting each other
Uh-huh.
always means, in their world, bottling up your feelings while your spouse.
That is not true. That's literally not true. When she is talking about how can I love you, that is the opposite of bottling up feelings. I don't know if Matt knows this, but talking about your feelings is not the same as bottling them up. Buckaroony. Epsilon 1, he cannot fathom having an emotional connection, period. Yeah, like that really is like it's just like polyamory, not just going out and like knocking out the bottom with somebody else, but really forming a connection, going on dates to the point where you are going on dates. Because let me tell you, being in a poly relationship is like being in any other relationship. You might start off, and again, it won't be the same for everybody, because there's, like we were talking about with furries and everything else, there's a wide variety of experiences. There are a lot of people out there who like doing a lot of different things, a lot of different ways. You're not always going to have a similar relationship. Sometimes in a relationship, you'll start off having a lot of sex at the beginning. That's very common in a lot of people's relationships. Over time, though, you're probably going to cool down a bit, even if you still have sex fairly often. If you are in a polyamorous relationship and you still have good relationships with both of your people, it's going to be the same. You're not always, when you go on a date with somebody, just because you're polyamorous, doesn't mean you're going to end up having sex with them. Like, he cannot separate the understanding of, like, the role emotions can play in relationships from his understanding of, like, sexual possessiveness.
Over his wife's latest boyfriend. Unfortunate choice of words there, perhaps, but anyway, watch.
That was
What I
Matt's
just
attempt at
saying is
humor.
that this man gets it, okay? Because you are a catch. And he makes an effort. He puts intentionality into his communication. He comments on your posts and your stuff. He makes plans. He wants to be around. He's proactive. He's got a great attitude, just in general.
Okay, so this is a supportive husband, and he's probably going to try and make it out like he's cucked or something. And that's the kind of conversation that you can have when you're just like an adult and you respect other people's feelings and their like internal monologue, and like you can understand those things. Unlike Matt, who's going to make it out to be like some kind of cuck situation. Yeah, see, this is perfectly good. Like, they obviously have a trusting enough relationship that he is able to make sure, like, hey, I don't just want you to go out with anybody. I don't just want you to hook up with somebody because you think they're hot. I want them to value you for who you are. And they've obviously talked about this. And he has, like this is understandable. This is good.
Now, if you didn't know any better and you saw that video, you would think that this was this was the woman's gay best friend and not her husband. And then
there's literally nothing about him that... Oh, Altered Rin, thank you very much for raiding with a party of 23.
when you're told the context, you realize that your original assumption was still basically correct for all intents and purposes. Now, you may be asking yourself, are any of these people actually happy?
This is going to be the really funny part where he is like speculating on the happiness of others.
Because again, if you're a
So
normal
good.
person and you see all this and you hear all this,
Again, just defining anybody who's different than him as abnormal. Oh, great stuff. Great stuff, Matt. Like, no, they couldn't possibly be happy because they're not normal, obviously. By my definition, a very normal person, Matt Walsh.
you think, well, that just sounds totally miserable. Like, that sounds, it's like a walking nightmare, a waking nightmare.
It really doesn't. It doesn't sound that bad to have people who love and understand you and aren't like just jealous and constantly territorial over you. Like, you just have to learn how to grow a little bit, Matt. blossom a bit.
Every single day. Who would want to live this way? That polyamorous quintuple that we talked about at the start of the monologue, they did their best to appear happy. And then a few months later, one of them landed in jail for nearly beating the woman's 5-month-old child to death. The guy in that video we just played a moment ago is trying his best to appear happy and quote-unquote supportive. But if you listen to these people speak for longer than 20 seconds, which is not an easy task.
Oh, this is going to be... Are you... Matt, buddy, buckaroo, are you sure you want to take the approach that by listening to the tone of someone's voice, you can tell if they're happy or not? Are you sure you want to base your judgment of somebody in their entirety on just how they sound when they're talking? Do you want to do that? Do you want to do that? Of all people in the world, of all people, Matt, you. Okay, no. Okay, we ball, like whatever.
I admit, you'll find that their deep, profound unhappiness eventually comes seeping through, and soon it's the only thing you can see.
It's just, I just unpaused it, but I gotta pause it again because he wants to talk about just listening to other people who are just supportive of their loved ones. You can hear their deep, profound unhappiness seep in. My dog just sniffed. Even she knows that's bullshit. She's allergic to it.
When you look at them. So the facade of happiness lasts for about 20 seconds, and then if you listen for longer than that, all the rest of it is, dear God, we are desperately unhappy.
Play that. Then if you're going to assert that, Matt, prove it. Like, if that's such a obvious thing to do for all of these couples out there, why don't you just prove it? Why don't you play a clip like that, buddy? Come on.
You know, indeed, even in these propaganda pieces meant to promote polyamory,
they're not meant to promote it. It's just,
the word count is devoted to explaining how the participants deal with their resentment and jealousy.
Okay, they're not propaganda pieces because this isn't a concerted effort. This is just people expanding upon, exploring, interrogating their own biases towards an emerging approach to human sexuality and relationships. And the reason why, Matt, people like you are the reason why so much of it is spent talking about resentment and emotionality. Because largely in these polyamorous relationships, the men are the ones who are overly territorial and unable to let loose and let go a little bit. Because of rhetoric like yours. Like, people like you are the reason why they're having a tough time. Great.
So jealousy, by their own account, is an ever-present feature of their lives. That's not the case in a healthy monogamous relationship.
It's also not the case in a healthy polyamorous relationship. I'm willing to bet if you talked more about that, Matt, if you talked more about... See, here's the thing. This is where Matt would always love to move goalposts. Because if you were to go and find, I'm sure, a video or another one of these articles or books talking about how, no, we're totally happy in our relationship and we're totally open and everything, he would shift the goalpost even more to being, that's what they say, but they're lying. You can tell by their voice or something for some reason. So no matter what, and this is really the only way Matt can prove himself right is by making shit up. That can completely reframe his argument as to why he's right.
Okay, in a healthy monogamous marriage, which is to say a real marriage, jealousy really shouldn't even come up. If you trust your spouse is faithful, nothing to be jealous about. But
it's the same thing with polyamory.
In these people's lives, it's just every single second of the day. But they have their ways of explaining that away. So back to the...
Dog, like, you have at your fingertips all of these things explaining how polyamory works. This is just the same way he is with trans people. You have so many resources to explain to you how people feel But you walk in with your preconceived notion and just adhere to that no matter what else you might read or hear. Like he's doing right here. Thanks, dog. Where he's saying they walk around jealous every second of the day. It's like, no, that's just what you think. From the small parts that you're reading.
New York Magazine article again, briefly. Quote, celebrating your lover while they marry their partner, while supporting your lover's lover's lover while they go through it, is an example of what Anna calls living life on hard mode. There's a real sense of connection that I think comes from doing hard things, and I'm someone who loves to do hard things, Sarah explains further. Some people like to run marathons. We like to some people like to run marathons. We like to do polyamory, complex relationship stuff. Sarah's favorite activity for the two of us to do is couples therapy, Nick says, smiling. Navigating the relationship dynamics is kind of generally a fun thing for us. It's like for relationship nerds. You know, there's a lot of different puns you can
see. There's a lot of different puns. See, like right here, you can see him trying to figure out how and why he's necessarily mad at this.
Meg and Sarah talking about she likes to do hard things, but you know, we're not going to get into that. And this is another tangent I'm not going to get into right now. Again,
also not a pun that would be wordplay, but whatever.
Here's more proof that most therapists are completely useless. I mean, these two are apparently seeing a couples therapist, like recreationally.
Oh my God.
And this couples therapist has, we can assume, given them advice that does not include stop engaging in serial adultery.
I'll be right back. Serial adultery.
So they are a couple that is constantly in a state of adultery, and they're going to a couples therapist, and given the fact that they keep going back to the therapist, we can assume the therapist has never once said to them, you know, one thing that can make things better for you guys, stop having sex with people that are not each other. But aside from the fact that therapy is so often a scam, what we see here is the attempt to paint sin.
I am shocked the guy who doesn't understand other people's emotions and forming relationships with others based on trust and boundaries thinks therapy is a scam. I am just... No notes, Matt. No notes.
Has complexity. Their open marriage is making them both miserable, but that's only because it's hard, you know, and it's hard in the same way that running a marathon is hard, they say. And the analogy is interesting because, of course, running a marathon is exactly what they are not doing. Okay, a monogamous marriage can much more accurately be compared to a marathon. No, I don't really like that comparison.
Again, so can a polyamorous relationship, you ding-dong. Like, I've said it before, I don't need to say it again. I'm gonna. Being polyamorous does not mean it's only sexual. It can be an emotionally based relationship. There are a wide variety of experiences beyond the ones that Matt likes to acknowledge. Largely, I think, because acknowledging those experiences completely undermines the fear-mongering he likes to spread.
Because a marathon, to me, just seems totally miserable from start to finish, which marriage is not. But at least marathons take commitment and perseverance. And those are the two things that polyamorous people...
Commitment and perseverance, two things absolutely not demonstrated by people who go to couples counseling and try and work through all of their issues and understand each other better. Great example. Not at all undermining your own point there.
Absolutely avoid at all costs. Being polyamorous isn't hard in the sense that marathons are hard. These kind of relationships are hard in the sense that it's hard to be a heroin addict. You know, in the sense that it's hard to be a pathological liar because you have to keep up with all the lies. It's hard not because you're taking on a challenge or you're doing...
It is wild to say relationships based around frankness and honesty. Dog, you're chewing so loud, honey. She got bone. She's so loud with that. It is wild to say relationships based around honesty and openness with people are the same as like, oh, you got to keep up with all your lies. It's like, that's not, you don't understand it, Matt. Like, at all. And that's fine. But the reason that articles like this are written is because people don't understand it, and it wants to educate about these topics that you might look at and go like, that's not for me. But you want to know more about, for curious people who don't just see something and make up their mind like Matt does. This is largely the same reason why I think, when we've talked about it with the furry thing, why I think a lot of people look at furries and look at furry culture and just immediately judge it on its surface, because they don't know anything else and they don't seek any information about it. And the only thing they're really supplied with is what they're told about it. And that just leads to ignorance and perpetuating that ignorance, like Matt does. Tea with Goblins has used 90 bits. I was in a poly relationship for 14 years. It was a lot of work and communication, but it was worth it, even though it is ended. We're both better people because we learned to be more honest and communicative with each other. Yeah, thank you. I've been in multiple poly relationships. Like, it's a good way to be. If that is for you, I'm not going to say like, oh, everybody should do it or everybody should try it, because it's not for everybody. Just like being in cishet monomonogamous. Cishet monogamous relationships are not for everybody.
Something difficult but worthwhile, but because you are a weak person following your most base desires, entirely unwilling to control your urges or strive for virtue. That's the kind of hard we're talking about.
I control your virtue. I love how he also pitted the idea of like monogamy as this thing that's like jealousy is a thing that's a natural instinct. But then he was also saying that you're just going with your most basic natural instincts to go out and have sex with people. It's like, okay, but when you were talking about people being jealous over monogamy and how that's a reason why people should be monogamous, you were portraying it the same way as a good thing, because that's a good natural instinct. But this, because it's something that you don't like, it's natural instinct, but it's bad, and you need to, because you're not preserving your virtue. Like, come on, dude.
You know, your life is hard not because you're doing hard things, but because you refuse to do hard things. It is hard in the way that it's hard to be weak, not in the way that it's hard to be strong.
He's been smoking that good with Jordan Peterson too much.
The difficulties that you are experiencing as weak and unfaithful people.
Again, we'd love to see Matt Walsh doing the thing where he speculates that he knows everything about where these things will end up, when in reality he knows like nothing about them. And as demonstrated in this video, has no willingness to really learn.
You know, unlike if you are strong and virtuous and trying to be committed and faithful and a good spouse, you know, there's hardships and difficulties that come in that sense in family life. But at the other end of it is immense joy. Whereas with this kind of hardship and difficulty, at the other end of it is just more hardship and difficulty.
There's no proof of that.
So a monogamous marriage, which is to say, again, a real marriage, will have hardships, sure. You're not going to be on cloud 9 every moment of the day until death do you part. That's just not reality. But there is immense joy available to you if you both work for it. In the case of the non-monogamous marriage, the open relationship,
yeah, same.
Marriage, there's no joy ever available. The most you could hope for is momentary pleasure, which is something you could have gotten in monogamy.
That's not at all true.
So there's nothing you can get out of it that's good that you.
Again, like I'm here to tell you, this is my lived experience as a polyamorous trans person. I feel joy with my partners beyond sexual joy. Like beyond just what Matt is trying to depict here. In fact, some of my partners I don't even have sex with that often. I still enjoy them and their presence. I talk to them every day and we share intimate and incredibly strong moments, important moments, and we reserve time for each other. We have relationships, romantic relationships, and we want to be in each other's future. And we make plans for that future together. The idea that Matt is saying, oh, you can't have any joy because you have more than one partner. Get fucked, dude. Like, who are you to know that? You have no experience with this, and you have no willingness to learn about it.
Why has the media, jumped on board the polyamory train all at once with such coordination? Well, because this is the next step in the destruction of the nuclear family. Some of us conservatives, not enough of us, but some of us, predicted 10 years ago that this is where it would all lead. After Obergefell, there are some of us who said, this is what's happening next. And it's happening.
That's not what he said. As somebody who read so many of Matt Walsh's blogs, I've read all of his blogs. And this isn't to say he didn't make the argument about polyamory specifically, because I'm sure he mentioned it at some point. It all blends together, unsurprisingly. But specifically, he attempted to link acceptance of gay people, not with trans, and not any of this other stuff that he likes to say, like, oh, I was right about this 10 years ago. He specifically linked it to a slippery slope fallacy about that leading to bestiality, incest, and pedophilia being normalized. Like, those were his big things. So he wants to like pull in Alex Jones and be like, I was right about this the whole time. It's not the beat you were banging to at the time, buddy.
We said that the assault on marriage would not simply end there. It would continue to the next destination. Of course, we were laughed at, and we were accused of engaging in a slippery slope fallacy. But as always, it turned out that the slope was as slippery as we said, and the only thing fallacious about it are the arguments presented by the people who are trying to expand the definition of marriage into oblivion. So that's where the fallacy is, but the slippery slope is real. Now,
and here, God, I almost wish this was available that I could have put in my videos, because this is just like such a great look into how Matt constructs his arguments, how like he proves himself right by omitting other information or not acknowledging outside information and not doing enough research into a topic, and yet still feeling assured in his authority on said topic. Because like all of these things don't prove you right. The only thing proving you right are your assertions that are not based on any facts, are not based on any nuance of the stories you've presented, and are in fact reliant entirely on you hoping your audience doesn't go and search out those sources, definitions, and stories for themselves and learning more about them, so that you can just pass on your preconceived notions, and you get to be, at the end of the day, Matt gets to be, I was right about this, as I'm always right, as I am the steadfast crusader of proper marriage.
Right? Like, it didn't take a prophet or a genius to see this coming.
Mm-hmm.
The marital union has two essential dimensions. It is fundamentally, in principle, procreative, and it is monogamous and committed. Once they waged an assault on one dimension, it was only a matter of time before they moved on to the next, and it really didn't even matter.
Again, it's fundamentally procreative is just not fucking true. Like again, the dude doesn't have the ability to like bring emotionality into something. Like by this nature, by Matt's rubric, like 60-year-old widowers shouldn't get remarried because they're not going to be able to have sex. They're not going to be able to procreate. What's the point? Like people who are sterile, they shouldn't be married. They shouldn't have a lifetime of companionship if that's what they choose. Because what's the point? Like you just...
Which one they started with, because the end result is the same. So wherever it began, we know where they want it to end, with the death of the family, which has always been the #1 enemy and the greatest of all threats to the leftist elites who run our country. They cannot enact their agenda and exercise total control over a culture that is comprised of strong, loving, individual family units where children are raised by caring mothers and protective fathers. They cannot...
Matt, I kind of feel like it's a dog shit plan to undermine the family by making a bigger and more supportive family. Like, I kind of feel like if that were the plan to undermine the nuclear family, that's not a very good plan to like destroy it. Maybe improve upon it for different people. And I love how he says this, like, no family with a protective father and a supporting mother have ever had problems. Like, really, Matt? You think that's the only thing? Okay.
Not control. If that's the way society is set up, they are there's nothing they could do. The elites, for all their money and power, would be rendered nearly impotent if that's the kind of society we have. Which is why they have to tear down the family, and have been trying to do so for many decades. And tragically, they have largely succeeded.
Look closely, everybody. This is the face of a man who knows he is fighting the losing side of the culture war, yet still has to do this every day. Sad. Sad.